Azinu Hashemaim v'adaberu. Heaven, be attentive. The word hazino comes from the word ozen, or hearken, v'adaberu, and I will speak. The sishma oretz imrefi, and the earth will hear the words of my mouth. Dibur is something more formal. Amira is something which is less formal. Like we find when Hashem speaks to Moshe in a more formal context, it's Dibur. That's called speaking. Amira is called saying. To say is less formal. When he speaks about heaven, it's formal. And why, regarding heaven, does he say hazino, hazinu? And when he speaks to the earth, he used the word shmiya, hearing. So over here, Rashi cites Chazal. Firstly, what is he speaking to heaven and earth? Hazina sham shani masher ben b'Yisrael to Edom b'Dover. I want you should be the witnesses to what I say. Shekach amarti lem shatem tu edim. Moshe, Moshe says, I'm a mere mortal. Tomorrow I will no longer be here. I will die. The Jews, they could deny they even entered into a covenant. Who's going to counter that claim that they never entered? Therefore, the witnesses, heaven and earth are the witnesses. These witnesses surpass Moshe's life. That if they're meritorious, the witness will come and give them their reward for upholding the bris. The vine will give its fruit. The earth will give its bounty. Heaven will give its due. And if they're culpable, the witness will be there, as like it says, witnesses who witness certain things. They're the ones who actually throw the stone on the person who deserves to be stoned. The heaven will withhold its rain. The earth will not give its bounty. Then ultimately you'll be destroyed by the nations of the world. Okay. Here the Balaturim explains the gematria, the numerical value, Hashamayim v'adabeiro, is Taryag, is 613. Hazinu Hashamayim v'adabeiro. I mean, Torah comes from heaven. Meaning, Hazinu l'tarik mitzvos. Meaning, you should be attentive to the tarik mitzvos. So he explains the pasuk begins with a hey, hazinu, and the pasuk ends with a yud, imrei fi. Shekol Hashem berosh hashira. Right? We have yud kei. Yesh bo zayin tevos, and there's 7 words in this pasuk. Hainu chotzo amudei shiva. The 7 pillars that hold up existence are 7 pillars. Keneged, zayin rekiim, Zayin Arotzos, Zayin Yimei Hamasa. This all corresponds to the 7 days of creation. the number 7. That's the nature. I mean, the world will only be upheld if they keep what's contained within this pasuk, which is 7 words. That's Torah mitzvahs. Okay. Second pasuk. Yarav kamota lichi. Excuse me. Yarav kamota lichi. It will pierce like rain. The Torah will pierce you like a downpour of rain. We'll see in a moment. Tizal katalim rosi. It will flow like dew, my words. Kesirim alei deshe, krivim alei yeshiv. Let's do Rashi. We find the word arifa by the Egla Arufa. If you find a corpse outside of a city, so you take a calf and you take it to a valley that it was never worked, and you break its neck. You decapitate it. That's the word arifa. Arifa segla arufa. So the Gemara tells us in Tainus that the Torah itself could either be Samer Dechaya or Samer de Musa. The Torah could be a life potion or it could be a death potion. If a person studies the Torah Lishma with the right intention, then it's a life potion. The same Torah, if a person studies it Shlo Lishma, it actually will compromise him and destroy him. So Tosas asks a question over there in Tainus. The Gemara tells us a number of locations, b'toch shlo l'shma bo l'shma, that even shlo l'shma, even if one doesn't study Torah with the right intent, it has value because ultimately brings l'shma. So how could the Gemara say in Tainus that if you study Torah shlo l'shma, it will ultimately compromise the person to the point that it will be destroyed? From the word arifa, it will break you, it will decapitate you. So Tosas explains that when it says shlo l'shma, it doesn't mean you study with an ulterior motive. That's b'toch shlo l'shma. That's what the Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos. So although it advises us you should serve the master not for the sake of reward, having b'shamshis a Rav Shlomo nas l'kabel pras, which it's suggested in Pirkei Avos. But even if you serve the master nas l'kabel pras for the sake of reward, it's fine, because based on the principle b'toch shlo l'shma. However, what does it mean that it will compromise you and destroy you? It's lekanter. What does lekanter mean? Where I use the Torah as a weapon to destroy someone else. For instance, if a person goes and is going to deliver a Torah lecture, and the other person prepares to refute him, to embarrass him, to destroy him. So the objective and the impetus to study is only to use the Torah as a weapon to embarrass the other person or to refute him, and that's its only value. Using Torah with that negative intent, that will destroy the person. Although the person immerses himself and comes upon whatever he comes upon, but since the motivation to study Torah is to use it with this extreme level of negativity, the Torah will destroy him. That's Tosas' answer. Yarav kamata likhi. If you use the Torah as this weapon, then Yarov, it will destroy you, it will decapitate you, it will destroy you, it will compromise you. But if you study it, not with that, of course, then there are various levels. Even Shlo Lishma, it has value because b'toch Shlo Lishma bo Lishma. That's Tosas' answer. But you see something interesting. You find that the Rabbeinu Bachya in one place points this out. The Ketores. The Ketores itself is what? Is the incense offering. Ultimately, it brings about the greatest bracha, brings wealth. The Mishnah tells us that the Kohanim, they would draw lots who would be involved in the service of the Ketores, and anybody who had been involved in the Ketores previously was not part of the lottery to be chosen to do the Ketores. Why? Because whoever engaged in the Ketores, it engendered wealth. It brought wealth to that person. So a person already had a previous opportunity to be involved, to become wealthy. You have to give another Kohen an opportunity to become wealthy. That's the Ketores. And the reason why we find by the Sandakos The person who holds the child by a bris, usually a person who's a sandik once, he doesn't take the sandikos again the second time. Why? Because the sandikos is like dictoris. And you have to give somebody else a chance to have that value of merit, the privilege to have that benefit. Same idea. The sandikos is like dictoris. But yet we find that dictoris, when Nodav Avihu had taken dictoris and brought it not appropriately, what happened to them? They died. So you see the same item, exactly the same item. If it's used properly, it brings bracha. It brings life. And if you misappropriate it, use it not in its proper context, it destroys you. Identically, the Torah is studying the same words, the same level of concentration, immersion. If the intent is positive, or it doesn't have this sinister intent, it enhances you. It brings life. But if you take that Torah and you use it as what? As a weapon with this negativity, it will destroy you. Also, he brings out, we find that when there was a plague by the Baal Peor, Moshe says to Aaron, take the Torah immediately and burn it in the middle of where the people are, where the plague is ensuing, and the plague will cease. So what do we see over there? Again, although the Torah originally brought death, here the Torah brought life. That Aaron was able, by burning the Torah in the middle of the Machne, because it was based on Tzivi Hashem, Hashem had said that's what should be done, it actually quelled and incapacitated the angel of death, that he wasn't able to take more Jews than he took at the time of the Baal Peor. Rashi explains Yarav Kamot Likhi differently than the Gemara. It's based on the Midrash. Yarav Kamot Likhi Zu Ha'edu She'idu Shani Oba B'fneichem. Torah Sattel Yisrael Shichayim Le'olam. The Torah brings life to the world. Kamota Zeh Shuchayim Lo. Just as rain is the source of life for existence, identically, Yarav Kamoto Likhi. My lekach, my commodity, lekach tov nosat lochem. It's like motor. Kashe yarfu hashemayim tal umotor. Just as when the skies drip water, identically, my lekach is the equivalent of the water. Yarfu shin yatif. Rashi interprets the word yatif differently than the Gemara. Yarif means it will drip. The skies will drip with rain. Chen yarfu tol, yirfun deshen. Tizel katal, it will flow like dew. Why does it say dew? Shekol smelchimbo. Everyone is happy with dew. Dew doesn't in any way interfere with people's lives. When it comes to rain, certain people are happy, certain people are not happy. The farmers are very happy when it rains. But people who travel and the roads are actually impacted and not passable because the roads become muddy, they're not happy about it. If you go Holchei Drochim, people are travelers. A person already had wine, had flowed into his pit, and now it rains and the water flows into that pit, it dilutes the rain. So not everybody's happy with rain. But when regarding the Torah, everybody will be happy. It will be like dew. Just as rain itself, if those happy, not happy, Torah will be like the dew, everybody's happy with dew. It doesn't in any way impact negatively on anybody's life. The Gemara tells us in Tainus, there are two types of dew. There's dew, the world always has to have dew. Why? Just as the world always has to have winds. You have to have crosswinds. Why? Because if there would not be winds in the world, the Gemara tells us, the heat would ultimately destroy the world. There's a certain degree of heat. Talking about climate control over here, global warming. The winds cool the world, that the heat will not destroy the world. So the world needs winds. And therefore the Gemara tells us, there's a pasuk that Klal Yisrael are like the winds of the earth. Just as the world cannot exist without winds, identically the world cannot exist without Klal Yisrael. And just as the dew also cools. There's tal, you have to have regular tal, then there's tal shabrocha. In addition to the ordinary dew, there's tal shabrocha. In addition, there's dew of blessing, which when that dew comes, it actually causes things to develop in a much more robust way, greater quality in terms of agriculture. Yisirim, Loshem Ruach Soro, it means like a gale wind. Targuma Kruach Mitro, Maruchos Halolo Machzikim, Esasabim. When it rains and then the wind blows, in terms of the whole synthesis with the sun and the rain, and how it absorbs into the crops. When the wind blows, the wind contributes to the development of the rain interacting with agriculture. Identically, those who study Torah, it advances those who study it. Tipi motor nirali, chrivim like arrows. Al shem sheyora kichetz nikra reviv, because it shoots like an arrow. It's called reviv. Come on, dat oma rova kashos desher atifas oretz mchusa bierik. The ground coverings, which is covered with vegetation. Esav klach echod, kori esav kol minu min lazu kori esav. Okay. I always point out that Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin that why did God create night when he created the world? So the Gemara says, Lo ivri leile el girsa. God created nighttime so people should study Torah. Because if it would be light 24 hours a day, people will be engaged in the physical work to the point that they can't continue working. They would just drop from exhaustion. When nighttime comes, since they're not able to be active, so either you go to sleep, but if you're a Jew, it's time available to study Torah. Lo ivri leili elu girsa. The night was created. Girsa means to review the text, to have textual learning and retain text. It's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Now, in the winter, we say Saint Talamotar. The winter months, that's the rainy season. We begin to say Mashuruch Maragoshim at the end of Sukkot, and then December 4th, we start saying the Saint Talamotar. And the Gemara tells us that the rains of the winter allow the crops of the spring and summer to grow. Meaning the earth is absorbed with that rain. To that point, the water table raises, and as a result of the earth being absorbed with all that rain, therefore the crops are able to grow. Whatever grows, grows. So due to the winter rains, that will determine what kind of bracha you're going to have in the spring and the summer, in agriculturally speaking. If there's a drought in the winter, there's a whole discussion, a whole masechta, tainis, you begin fasting. Doesn't rain by a certain time, only the Talmidei Chacham begin fasting. And it's a fast Monday and Thursday, and it's an ordinary fast. Doesn't rain by a certain date, everybody begins fasting. Then it takes on a more serious note, then literally it's like Yom Kippur. The 5 areas of deprivation, all people not permitted to wear shoes, all those stringencies are in place. That's how serious it becomes. Because if it doesn't rain in the winter, we have a problem. In the spring and the summer, the crops, they're not going to grow properly. So the winter rains determine what's going to happen, the bracha, which is going to happen in the spring and the summer. But it's interesting. The longest nights are winter nights. Summer, spring, it gets shorter. The day is longer. The night is shorter. So we find there's a certain corresponding factor to rain and the study of Torah. Lo ivri leila ela girsa. Hashem created night to study. So when does one study longer? When is there more time available to study? A person who works, a farmer, and you live in an agricultural society, the night is available to study. So when do you have more time to study? In the summertime, in the wintertime. So the winter study is what determines the bracha that you can have throughout the year. Just as the rain of the winter, where the nights are longer, That's when those rains determine what kind of bracha you can have in the spring and the summer. Identically, the Torah you study, when the nights are longer, that will determine what kind of bracha you're going to have. It goes hand in hand. And that's what we're saying. Torah is like motor. Moshe Rabbeinu says, Tizal kamoto likhi. Just as the rain is necessary for the world, the Torah is necessary for the world. At the degree that you study the Torah, that will determine the bracha that's going to take place later. So we find this corresponding factor. This whole discussion in Tainus based on Psukim in Navi that we find Torah is compared to water. The Gemara quotes a pasuk, whoever is thirsty should go to the water. And the Gemara says, what does that mean? It means to study Torah. If you have a thirst for Torah, you should study the Torah. There's a famous word from Rav Shach, Zechat Tzarech Livrocho. The law is that if a person drinks water and he has no desire to drink the water, water is interesting. Water only has a taste, so to say. It has no taste. But a person has a desire to drink water, which means it's easy to drink the water if you're thirsty. A person is not thirsty, it's difficult to drink water. Just to hydrate yourself. You have to just drink it. You can just gulp it. And that's what halach is, that if you drink any liquid other than water, you always say a bracha. Whether you have an interest in drinking juice or any other liquid, you have to say a bracha. Of course, the liquid innately has a taste. Water, the only time you say a bracha on water is only if you have a benefit where you enjoy drinking the water, some degree of enjoyment. But let's say a person has to take a pill and you're not thirsty. You're drinking the water. One does not say a bracha on the pill, on the water, although you're drinking the same water. So Rav Shach says that Torah is like water. When does one merit siyata d'shmaya? To when you study Torah, if you have a desire to study at some level of desire, that's when you draw the greatest level of siyata d'shmaya, of divine assistance. The pasuk says, the one who's thirsty, he should go to the water. If there's thirst, then the water has value. If a person has not thirsty whatsoever, you're just reading the words, but it doesn't touch you at all, that Torah has you're doing a mitzvah you're doing. But in terms of the way the person's touched, you're not touched very, very, very strongly by that experience of studying the Torah. But if you study the Torah with an interest, and there's a desire, and there's a level of enjoyment, then that Torah has special value. That's Rosh Shach, what he says. But the Gemara says something else. The Gemara says, why is Torah compared to water? Not only because it's the life source, because just as water flows from a higher location to a lower location, identically, in our Torah, the Torah can only exist, or nickness can only be acquired, processed by a person who has a humble spirit. If you have humility, you have greater level, you have relevance to Torah. If you have no humility, or a person has less humility, you have less relevance to the Torah. Just as water flows from a high location to a low location, identically, the person who's more humble, he merits greater siyata d'shmaya to be able to come upon the truth of the Torah. The Gemara tells us in Megillah, regarding the study of Torah, Yagatim Motzos Tamin, that if you toil for Torah and you come upon its truth, you believe that person. A person claims, Lo Yogati Motzosi, I did not toil for the Torah, it came upon its truth, Al Tamin, you don't believe that person. Person says, Lo Yogati Motzosi, I did not toil, I came upon its truth, don't believe that person. Person says, I toiled, I did not come upon its truth, don't believe that person. What does it mean, don't believe him? You may believe you toiled sufficiently, but that you didn't. Because if you would have toiled sufficiently, you would have come upon its truth. So toiling and truth go hand in hand. Now the question is, but why do you toil? Do I toil for myself? Right? We say when we make a siyum, we finish a Masechta, we say, Anu rotzim heim rotzim. They run and we run. Where do they run? Anu rotzim lo l'mabo. We run for what? To have a share in the world to come. Heim rotzim be'er shachas. They run to go to the depths of hell. Be'er shachas means the depths of hell, the world, what they're pursuing. Anu amelim heim amelim. We toil and they toil. We toil umakabim schar. for the toiling, we receive reward. If you study Torah, even if you don't come upon its truth, initially, you get reward. There's a famous question which is asked by the Maharal of Prague. Everybody asks the question. The text of the bracha that we say for Birchas HaTorah is what? Asher k'dshan mitzosa b'tzivonu lasok b'divrei Torah. Right? To engage in the words of Torah. Lasok. Lasok means engagement. Svardim, that text is different than the Ashkenazic text. Svardim, they say the bracha al divrei Torah. Asher k'dshan mitzosa al divrei Torah. For the words of Torah. But seemingly, even according to them, it's difficult. The bracha should be Ashek Shan Lilmo Torah, right? Lilmo, to study Torah. The mitzvah is Limera Torah, study of Torah. But according to the Ashkenazic text, it's definitely doesn't even mention Divrei Torah. It's Lasuk b'Torah, to engage in Torah. But why not the text Chazal, the Ashkenazic Gedolah, when they authored the text for the Birchas Torah, they should have said Lilmo Torah. Why not? So the Maharal says something interesting. The Maharal of Prague. Let's say you study something and you work on it, and you've been working on it for 2 days, and you haven't come to understand what the Gemara is saying. Right? Like sometimes Mark says, this doesn't make any sense. Mark, is the quote accurate? Maybe not quite. Okay? So I said, no, it makes sense. You don't understand? You will understand. Okay? So until you come upon its understanding, all that time that you invested, is that considered just an exercise in futility? Is it? Well, no. The process, the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is engage in the process. The moment you learn, you don't understand. The mitzvah is to engage, lasok, engage in Torah. And that engagement, since ultimately brings to the understanding of Torah at some level, even if you don't understand it, but that's the process, that's the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So you fully, that's Hema Meil, Vano Amelim. Ono Amelim, Makabel Skar. When we toil, even if you don't come upon its truth, that you toil for the sake of try to understand, the process, you're fully rewarded. You're fully compensated. In the material world, you bring in the prize, you get a bonus. You don't bring in the prize, you don't get the commission, you don't get the bonus. That's Hema Melim Ve'ent Makabel Schar. With us, it's the effort. And as long as you make a reasonable effort, a person opens the book and closes the book, that's not considered amelus. There's no amel, there's no toiling. But if it's considered something which is significant to some degree, you're fully rewarded for whatever that level of toil is, whatever initiative you take. Torah quotes a pasuk from the Novi that the six sections of Shas, each one is referred to something else. What is Zroim? Zroim is the first section of Shas. What is it known as? The Novi, it's called Emuna. Emuna is Zroim. This is plantings. Why is Zroim Emuna? Very simple. The circumstance of the farmer. You can have the best soil, you can have the best seed, you can have the best fertilizer, but you realize it doesn't rain, nothing happens. So the farmer, just because of his vocation that he's involved in, his circumstance causes him to have faith. If he doesn't have faith, he's out of business. Therefore, Zroim is Emunah. Because without Emunah, you might as well close up shop and go somewhere else. So the farmer prays. He prays that it should rain, and God will bring the rain. Because if it doesn't rain, there's no crop. They talk about the Dust Bowl. You have the Super Bowl and you have the Dust Bowl. Too much involved in the Super Bowl, it ends up it's a Dust Bowl. That's all it is. Okay. Alan, you agree? Okay.
So, Rabbi, the Zohar and the Rav Chaim Volozhin, so Torah is like dew in the sense that it has to be constant or we don't exist.
Correct.
And when the dew is constant, that means even when it's not raining, there's dew?
Yes, there has to be always dew. But that dew is not called Tal shel brocha. That's dew. There's dew, and there's tal shel brocha. There's basic dew, then there's tal, which is blessing, which is another level. We find, interesting, by the mon, when it would fall every morning, it was covered with dew. It was like an encasement on the bottom and top. It says dak b'chuspos, but it was like an encasement. It was dew. And as the sun shines, the dew evaporates, it dissipates, and that's the dew would melt, and the mon would melt. That the Rashi brings the Chazal that what would happen when the mon would melt, it would go into the streams and into the rivers, and the deer, when they would drink from the rivers or from the springs, the non-Jews would catch those deer, and when they would slaughter them and they would eat the meat, they'd have a sense of what the mon was all about. Rashi says Chazal. Because the animal that would eat it was a beneficiary of that mon that dissolved and ran into the streams, flowed into the streams. Ein lichi on the Torah. It says Yarov kalikhi. Kamoto lichi. Ein lichi on the Torah. Shenema ki lekach tov nosati lochem torsi atozovu. Quotes the pasuk Mishlei. Lama nishtul Torah lamotor. Why is the Torah compared to rain? Ma motor meshachekes avonim. Just as rain ultimately wears away stone. The famous story with Rabbi Akiva when he saw the water dripping on the stone, and he saw how this water wore away the stone. Rabbi Akiva drew a kal v'chomer. He says, "My heart is no harder than a stone." And just as the water is able to penetrate the stone, Torah can penetrate my heart. And that was the impetus for Rebbe Kiva to go study Torah. When he saw the water dripping on the stones, it says, just as water, meshachekes avonim, it dissolves rock. Shnem avonim shochu mayim, quotes a pasuk in the Yov, after meshachekes leifo even. It causes the heart of stone to be dissolved. It softens it. That if one's heart is like stone, in the muach, it melts. Vim barzelu, and if it's like iron, mispotzeits, it bursts. Therefore, it's in the best interest of a person, lahomis atzmo, meaning to deny yourself the amenities of life for the sake of Torah, and to engage in it day and night. That's its value, because all the impediments to spirituality in the Jew's life, it's due to the heart of stone and the heart that's like iron. So if you want to penetrate that heart, to dissolve it, to incapacitate the Yetzer Hara, this is Barasi Yetzer Hara Torah Tavlin, you should study Torah day and night. Lahomis atzmo. Lahomis means to deny yourself all those pleasures of life. Only then do you have relevance to come upon the truth of Torah. And that's what it says in Yeshua. You should engage in Torah day and night. Versus, but I've toiled enough, and I didn't come upon its truth. Just as the world cannot exist without rain, all good grows from rain. All agriculture is rain. The world cannot exist without Torah. The pasuk I quoted from the Mishnah. If the bris would not be in effect day and night, it's pasuk in Yirmiyah. This is interesting. Just as when it starts raining, it starts dripping. It doesn't come down in a deluge. You start at an elementary level. First, you start the Aleph base. So if Ola Laminin Godel, the Hebrew alphabet starts Aleph base 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and how does it end? Kuf, Reish, Shin, Tov. You get until higher numbers. You start lower numbers, like Jane knows. First, you start off with the small deal. When you do the small deal well, then you just go for the big deals. That's exactly what the Medrash is saying. The Aleph Beis starts the lesser level, Aleph Beis Gimel Dalet Hey, then Kuf Rei Shin Tov. Then it's the larger. Once you have it all complete, you have the full picture, then you can begin understanding the Torah and all its inferences. Okay, we're going to stop here. Do the halacha. I'll take care.